A previous girlfriend, she had 3 sisters, and so these 4 girls...
Where is this going?
Yeah, no, it's all good. Well,
Okay.
They went to do a kind of, via some contacts I had, they went to do a water sports day somewhere or other, all 4 of them, and one of the sisters has just the most enormous bosoms. Welcome to episode 9 of Boat Nuts, the weekly podcast about all things boaty. Now, this is Hugo Andre, editor of Motorboat Yachting magazine, and I am Boat Nut number 2, Alex Smith, deputy editor. Each week we come to a different location, jump on board a different boat. So where are we today, Hugo?
Today we are at Premier Marina's Swanwick facility on board a very lovely Azimuth 68 flybridge. And if there's one thing I can tell you about this boat, is that it is a stock boat, so the price has been reduced from 3.28 million ex-tax to just 2.99 ex-VAT. And that is a lot of boat for the money and almost £300,000 saved. So well worth a look if you want something you can get going on quickly.
Maybe we should club together, have a go at that.
Let's do it, raid the piggy bank.
Let's try it. In the meantime, we've got to talk about a boat, a product and an issue. And the boat today is a very exciting one, the Arksen 85, which you've tested yourself, haven't you?
Absolutely, really interesting boat. Aluminium Explorer, lots to say about it.
Yeah, the product of the day is Wetsuits, and we both own plenty of those, haven't we?
We've had more than our fair share.
Yeah, so there's a great deal to say about that. And our issue of the day is boat decking. There are loads of alternatives to natural teak now, so we're going to run through those, discuss the merits of each, and see which we favour. In the meantime, what we need to do then is just head straight downstairs and chat about that beautiful Arksen 85.
Let's do it.
Right. Right then, our boat of the week is something a little bit special. It's the Arksen 85. Now, if you don't know, Arksen is basically quite a new but already very well established British adventure company. And since we became aware of them, you know, I've kind of thought that it's as much about the marketing as it is about the hardware. But actually, a couple of weeks ago, I tested their first rib, the Arksen Discovery 8, in some pretty nasty seas, and it behaved beautifully. It really is built to look after you. But this Arksen 85, their Explorer flagship, is a really serious piece of hardware, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I've just been out in Greece testing it, and I'm with you. Initially, I was a little bit sceptical about the whole idea of an adventure brand rather than a boat building company.
Yeah.
Because, you know, by and large, when, I don't know, car brands try and build a boat, it never quite works.
Yeah.
But having actually been out on the boat on their flagship 85 Explorer yacht, it is a really proper piece of kit. Yeah. So it's built all aluminium. It's designed by Humphreys Yacht Design, and it follows something called a low displacement to length ratio. So effectively, it's very long, very thin, relatively shallow draft, extremely efficient through the water. So the whole point of it is you can do big distances using very little fuel and go pretty much anywhere in the world you want to go. So it's full, it's not actually a category A, it's beyond that. It's almost a sort of semi-ice class boat. So you can go pretty much anywhere on the planet you want to go. Has a range of 7,000 nautical miles.
So across the Atlantic and back. And
you can go, so effectively, you have to go relatively slowly, but about 7 knots. You could start in London, you could cruise across to New York, turn around and come back without ever having to refuel. Now, that is quite significant. And I have actually sort of been on board, taken my own fuel figures and demonstrated it. Sure, the reality is, you know, you're going to use a bit more fuel because you might get stuck in a storm, or you might, probably doesn't allow for use of generators and so on. But in terms of pure fuel consumption, with still leaving a 20% reserve capacity, it has got that facility to do that kind of range.
Well, that's amazing. But you presumably it's not a quick boat, is it?
No, it's not a quick boat. It will do about sort of 13, 14 knots. Because of that unusual sort of fast displacement design.
Yeah.
So no, but it's not for racing around the place. It is for getting there incredibly comfortably, very fuel efficiently, super quiet as well.
Yeah.
It's really, really quiet. I don't think I've tested any other boat that has had such consistently low decibel levels. It was like 51 dBA.
Wow.
All the way from kind of 6 knots to about 12 knots. The meter did not budge an inch.
That's unbelievable.
It is.
But that's particularly unbelievable because it's an aluminium boat. And
which,
for the most part, aluminium, they can sometimes struggle a little bit with reverberation and noise from the water impacting on the hull.
If it's a sort of fast planing boat. I think the difference with this is it just very much slides through it. The whole point of it is to disturb the water as little as possible. But there's a lot of sound insulation. They've really gone about it properly, in terms of the engine mounts, in terms of the floor mounts. And to be fair, it does help that it's a tri-deck design. So the main helm position, the bridge deck, is an extra deck above where the engines would normally be. So you are that much, or at least there's a whole sort of deck between the engines and you, which does help insulate it further. But it totally sort of changes your whole perspective on cruising. Suddenly, if there's not that noise, you don't mind the fact that you're travelling all through the night. You can easily travel through the night on that. Your guests could sleep absolutely fine. So it just changes how you go about cruising and what you use it for.
Kind of an expedition yacht that doesn't make you suffer for it.
Yeah, and to be fair, this particular one belongs to a Greek chap, and he hasn't yet been exploring sort of all around the world. But for example, he was going to cruise from where we tested it in Greece, but it was a long distance. But rather than trying to rush there in any kind of hurry, he was just going to do it overnight. You set off at 8 o'clock in the evening, guests would all go to bed, wake up the next morning, and you'd already be sort of 200 miles away.
Was this the fella you were telling me about a few weeks back who he's got a smaller boat that's a Targa Pilot House offshore cruiser? So essentially he's taken what he loves about a Targa, he's scaled it up massively to something
absolutely. And even the Targa he took from Norway all the way to Greece.
Wow.
Through, rather than having it shipped. It's a serious trip. But he's one of those guys, he's all about the experience. He enjoys the whole process. He skippers captains the boat himself when he's on board. Genuine sort of enthusiast. And I think that's the sort of person that it's going to appeal to. It's not just someone who wants a boat to show off to their mates or to spend a couple of days on board. It is for proper long distance cruising, expeditions. In fact, one of the things they're trying to do is sell shares in a boat. So rather than owning your own boat, you're more sort of buying into the experiences. So yes, technically you'll own whatever it is, a quarter share of the boat or a fifth share of the boat. But rather than just having the ability to use that, they will sort of build expeditions around what the owners want. So you might go off to climb Everest, or you might go off to dive in the Seychelles, or you might go off to explore a wreck off, I don't know, Madagascar, Maldives, whatever it may be. But rather than just do the usual trip around the Mediterranean or whatever, you can actually experience the world from a yacht. Yeah,
that's part of it that I guess kind of maybe a bit suspicious of the marketing angle at first. But actually, as a key part of the package with any of these boats from Arksen, I mean, they do tend to fetch a bit of a premium. But at the same time, you're buying into not just the hardware, but the expertise of an adventure-based infrastructure that enables you to use that properly, aren't you?
Exactly, and that's the idea. They will put somebody on board who enables you to climb mountains, or to go diving safely, or to explore some remote tribal area, whatever that may be. They will have the kind of expertise to make that possible. So, but I think what I was really impressed by was it has that credibility as a boat as well. It's one thing to sell the lifestyle and the dream, but you've got to back it up with serious credibility. And having been on the yacht, it definitely feels like it is fully capable of that. Yeah,
indeed. It's built in Britain as well, isn't it?
It's built in Britain. It's built on the Isle of Wight. It uses 70% recycled aluminium. It carries 17,000 litres of fuel, and everything is built for sort of total redundancy. So there is backups for backups for backups. It's got very low stress Scania 350 horsepower engines. They only rev to 1800 RPM, but they will run constantly at that speed for as long as you like. It's got a sewage treatment plant on board, so you can go, go anywhere you like in the world and make sure you're not polluting the local area. They've just thought of everything. It's got water makers, it's got lithium-ion batteries and solar panels so that you can run off-grid. You don't have to run the generators if you want to go silent running.
Well, it certainly looks like a very serious, practical expedition yacht. In fact, your first video on it, where you just had a little walk around, somebody said, I like this thing less than any other boat you've ever shown me because it looks so confrontational and uncompromising. And other people were saying, yeah, but you're missing the point.
Yeah.
So tell us the point. So you jump on board the main deck. I had a look at your video, and the main deck. You've got this kind of transition space, haven't you? Like a lobby at the back end between the saloon and the aft cockpit.
Yeah, so that's one sort of tiny little detail, but it's almost like an airlock entering a spacecraft or something. So you've got a door on either side of it. You've got those full sort of waterproof, heavy-duty, airtight door that sort of seals out everything, and then you have a sliding inner door. So if you are in a really cold climate, if you're exploring the Antarctic or something, then rather than sort of opening the door and this massive draft of cold air and wet water coming in, you close off the inner door, you open the outer door, you go in, and then right there's a little flip-up seat so you can take off all your heavy wet kit. There's a little drying locker right next to it, so you can dry everything. And then once you've closed the outer door, you can open the inner door and go through into it. So
and it's from that kind of transitional lobby at the back end that you get the internal stairwell up to the...
yes, so you can go straight up. It has a very lovely Design Unlimited interior. It's not sort of overly flash, but it's very comfortable, and I like that sort of
Design Unlimited,
contrast.
though. They're the people who did the interior designs for Windy, are they not? They're Modern Windy Fleet.
Windy and Sunseeker.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that's right, but it's a very lovely... It's not sort of flash glitzy, it's just built for purpose. So there's some really neat touches. And you can, of course, being aluminium, you can totally sort of vary the layout and so on, but this particular boat has a lovely saloon on the main deck that stretches all the way forward to the windscreen. But if you want to helm it from downstairs, there is a little desk area that just folds up and has all the facilities, all the sort of MFDs you want to, so that if you want to cruise from the lower deck, either because you want to be sort of surrounded by your family and chatting, if you're just covering distance and just need to keep half an eye on the screen, you can do that. Or if it's really stormy and you've got a bit of roll up top, come down a deck, helm it from the lower deck, because naturally the movement is just going to be that much less if you're a deck lower down.
Oh, very good.
But it has Humphrey stabilizers. It's just one of those boats that you think someone knows what they're doing. They understand what people want from a long-range explorer yacht, and they've spec'd it accordingly. So yeah, it's cleverly done. It's not going to be for everyone. It's a lot of money for the sort of size of boat.
Do we know how much money?
I think it starts at about £8.5 million, which is pretty chunky for an 85-foot boat. But it's a tri-deck. And it just does things that other boats won't do. You know, you take it to places that you just wouldn't dare to take a mainstream production yacht. You just wouldn't have the range, you wouldn't have the robustness. And it is really comfortable. We didn't have big waves when we were testing it, to be fair. But you know that sort of feeling when it just feels utterly planted, the stabilizers doing their stuff, you can see the way it runs through the waves, you don't even feel them, it just parts them, drops them over to the side. And it's seriously robust. You know, the glass on that main deck saloon, 25 millimetres thick.
25?
Yeah. So you can get a massive green wave coming straight over the bow.
No damage.
No damage at all.
Gotta love that.
So it's just really well. And if you want to have a fully faired and painted yacht to make it look like a super yacht, you can do it. But I don't think that's really the point. It's a bit like buying a Defender or something, a Land Rover Defender, and then trying to make it look like a Rolls Royce. You know, what's the point in that? If you're going to be using it properly, you don't need layers of paint and fairing. It just weighs you down and adds money, and then you're afraid of scratching it.
No, and you're right, actually. In terms of the internal fit out, if it looks roughy-tufty from the outside, which very clearly it is, on the inside, actually, it's quite homely and welcoming in a way. Do you know?
It is. And you don't get a huge amount of volume on board because of that long, slender hull design. The cabins are relatively modest, certainly in terms of scale. And
of course, it doesn't help that you've got sections of watertight compartments down there as well, haven't you? So it kind of
absolutely.
Everything
So the whole of the lower
sections.
deck is divided into 3 watertight compartments. So if the unthinkable happens and you hit a massive reef or rock and tear open the hull, you've still got sufficient buoyancy in the remaining sealed sections to keep you afloat. You know, they're really not messing. It's not all show and no go. This is absolutely the real deal. Hopefully it would never ever happen, but you have got that ability if you want to. And there's a whole separate lazarette at the rear where you've got a proper workshop and workbench and laundry and dive bottle refills and love it.
Yeah, I know
it's not going to appeal to everyone, but
air intakes for the engine room are right up high on the top deck
and make sure that even the spray doesn't get in.
Yeah.
And it's also one of those relatively sort of egalitarian in terms of the space divide. You know, the owner hasn't got a vast cabin and everybody else has tiny little ones. Even the owner's cabin, you know, he hasn't gone for a full beam-on. He's actually given over some of it to his full-time captain who lives on board most of the time. So, but, you know, he wanted to make sure that he's equally happy and comfortable and got his own facilities. So he hasn't gone for a full beam cabin. There's then, I think, 4 other relatively small guest cabins, all the same. Sometimes the crew will occupy some of them, sometimes guests will. But again, it's not about the luxury of your personal cabin space. It's about the luxury of enjoying experiences and places that other people just won't have access to.
Yeah, there's something intoxicating, isn't there, about owning a thing, even if you don't take full advantage of that because it's maybe a bit too capable for your own skills, of owning a thing that can do pretty much anything you want to task it with.
Yeah.
It's an exciting thing, and there's a 65 and a 75 on the books as well, isn't there?
There are smaller ones coming, so yeah, they do a whole range of boats now, and they started off doing like sort of tuned versions of XO boats, you know, little aluminium adventure boats, and they were great, but ultimately they weren't spectacularly different to the original manufactured boat.
No, you're right.
But these ones that they're building now, that rib is a bespoke Arksen boat, the
Excellent.
85 is a bespoke boat, and they've also got designs for smaller ones.
I think they're all the better for it, to be honest with you, because I felt like those kind of EXO-based pilot house cruisers that they produced, I think they did a 28 and a 30 based on the Explorer 9 and 10. I thought they just asked them to do a little too much for the available space. And there were pinch points. It was quite awkward. What they've got here in the form of their rib range, the Arksen Discovery line, and also the Explorer range that you're just discussing now, that is really impressive stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
And actually, even though they still sell Arksen T-shirts, technical T-shirts for £140 a pop, which I think is completely absurd.
That grates a little with me. But
You've got to say that in the form of this 85 and in the form of their rib line, they're really onto something, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think they just need to make it clear that they are an adventure boat company first. You know, if you're going to get people to be spending £10 million on a boat, you've got to have that focus. It mustn't just feel like something they do on the side. And I think if they really focus on that and get the message out and get people to experience the boats physically, come and see them, preferably take them out to sea, because it's the kind of boat you need to be on board and actually spend some time on to really appreciate and get what it's all about.
It's true, and if you want to helm a massive, capable, ocean-going boat with a tiny little steering wheel like a button, just the absurdity of that's fun in its own right.
It is quite weird.
Worth
It's just, rather than a full wheel, we ought to explain, it just has this tiny little commercial, it's almost like a half wheel. It looks like something you'd find on a Tonka toy or something.
Yeah.
But the reality is, when you're only doing sort of, 8, 10, 12 knots, and you're covering huge distances, so most of the time you're on autopilot. When you're actually manoeuvring, it's quite handy to be able to flick it from side to side in no time at all. It's a different thing. It takes a bit of time getting used to, but it's got powerful bow and stern thrusters, so you can manoeuvre it around if you need a bit of help, and then you just use the little wheel to edge it in. But
I've used a few of those little sort of commercial style sticks that you just knock to port or starboard, same sort of deal. And that confuses a few people who prefer a traditional steering wheel, but actually they work well.
Yeah, and it's got lots of external helms on the side decks and things if you want to. So
you've got 5 helms on that boat, have you?
Yes, I think it's 5. So one on the main bridge deck, one on the saloon, 2 on each of the sort of side decks forward, and then one overlooking the stern, so you can come in stern to a med style berth.
Yeah, all bases
You've
covered.
got it all covered.
Yeah, they really have. And although we've talked about boats that are coming, like the 65, the 75, and in the rib line, there's the 6, 7, 10 and 12 that will come to join the 8. It's a relatively young company doing amazing things. So we owe it to them, I think, to just concentrate on the hardware they've got out there now, because that is impressive stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And much as I admire, and if it brings in extra money and helps subsidise the marine side of it, fair play to them. But yeah, first and foremost, a boat company with some really impressive products.
Yeah, exciting British company and top quality kit. So we should move on to our product of the week, which is wetsuits.
Yes.
Now, we've all got quite lengthy experience of wetsuits, I think. So it's worth just explaining the basic principle in relation to dry suits and other foulies. It's basically a suit, kind of a onesie made of skin-tight neoprene that traps a little layer of water next to your skin, which warms up and insulates you from external conditions, just to give you thermal control when you're in the marine environment. It also gives you a little bit of extra protection and extra buoyancy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as I say, we've owned a few over the years. So
more than I care to mention.
What are your experiences?
Well, there's there are definitely good ones and bad ones. I've had many of them over the course of my life. I'm quite into my various water sports like windsurfing and water skiing and the like. I'm not one of these sort of cold water swimmers or anything like that, because I think that's a different thing entirely if you're looking for a swimming wetsuit. But for me, it's all about keeping warm. And personally, I'm a much bigger fan of a wetsuit than a dry suit. I don't really like the feel of a dry suit. It's like you're sort of sealing yourself into a sort of ready to cook bag or something.
Yeah, I love it. I love a dry suit though.
Really?
Yeah, I love it. I love jumping into the water and then releasing that little bit of hot air and it like shrink wraps you, doesn't it? You know what I mean? And then at the end of the day, you just whip it off like a low rent 007 and out you step into your hoodie or whatever. But yeah, I've got a lot of time for dry suit. I owned a couple, but wetsuits.
Yeah, so I think a number of things you need to think about really. So,
well, the first is shape, isn't it?
Absolutely. So first of all, you've got to decide whether you want a longie or a shorty, whether you want arms or...
Grab a couple.
Go on then.
Here's my shorty.
Yeah.
So as you can see, short arms, short legs, and excuse me, relatively thin material. So the neoprene will be around about 2-3 millimetres for summer use.
Yeah.
And this one actually comes with sort of detachable arms. You can just slot the arms on if you fancy a bit of that.
Them.
Yeah, they've just sat in my cupboard.
Do you ever find the arms? You can't find them when you need them.
No, you can't. No, I feel a bit of a fool using them. And this is a front zip as well. You get front zips and back zips. But if you want something a little warmer, then you tend to go for, well, some people call them a steamer, where you've got your arms and your legs all integrated like an enormous onesie. And this tends to be a bit thicker. So 3 or 4 mil this is, but for winter use you can get 5-6 mil stuff for people who like to go surfing in like February.
And it is all about, and when we say sort of 3-4 mil or 4-5, that tends to be the thickest material is around the core of the body, where you want to retain that core warmth, and then the arms and the legs, because you want a bit more freedom of movement, they tend to be a millimetre or so thinner, just to give you a bit more stretch and flexibility.
Well, that's right. Well, I even though this is a relatively thick and warm one that I use for 3 season stuff, I got it from a company called Zone 3, which is a triathlon company, because I thought, even though, you know, I'm not that sort of fella anymore by any means, they produce wetsuits with extra flexibility, which means that you can actually move a little bit. I like a bit of stand-up paddleboarding, and you want to have some freedom with your back panel and with your underarm panels. And
that, in theory, is one of the benefits of having a front zip rather than a rear one. So rear ones tend to be a little bit easier to get in and out of, because you just have a sort of a wider opening, effectively. But because they slightly sort of compromise your movement around the shoulders, the front-loading one tends to be a bit better. And also, I'm told that you're less likely to get flushing, which is a slightly strange technical term. We're not talking about toilet flushing. We're talking about when if you move and you get movement, you sometimes get a sort of wash of cold water coming down your neck.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly it. And you know, you can get that with any wetsuit that's ill-fitting. And as I say in the intro to this segment, you need it to fit properly, so that the neoprene's close to your skin all over, retains that warm protective layer of water because, of course, if you've got a gap, that flushing happens. Out comes the warm water, in comes some cold. It's not just uncomfortable in terms of making you cold, but it gives you rashes, doesn't it? It actually rubs and feels nasty.
Occasionally, particularly something like windsurfing, where you're sort of in and out of the water, and the water is cold. Sometimes you're on a sunny day, but every now and then, if you've actually worked up a bit of a sweat inside, you can then just pull it open and have a nice little flush of cold water. It's a bit like turning your pillow over at night and having the cool side of the pillow from time to time.
Talking of getting a little bit warm inside, tell us about your near-death experience in a wetsuit.
Yes, so I always sort of like to try and stay up, sort of keep pace with some of my younger cousins who I quite often go windsurfing with. And 90% of the time that is in the summer, but we all happen to be down over Christmas, during the Christmas break, and they decided it was going to be a good idea to go windsurfing on a day when it was actually snowing at the time. And clearly there was a little bit of sort of, one-upmanship. Yeah, we're all going. And I thought, I better try and keep pace. But I was sort of well into my 40s, if not my 50s at the time. And I thought, I'll give it a go. I've got a decent winter wetsuit. So kitted up, went out windsurfing, had boots on, didn't have gloves, and crucially didn't have a sort of balaclava thing. So my body was cooking inside this really heavy duty steamer wetsuit. My head was absolutely freezing, and of course I was totally unfit. So we went out for about 20 minutes and I was struggling a bit because I just didn't have the sort of strength, and you know how the cold saps your strength. And it got to the point where I thought, if I go much further, I'm not sure I'm going to have the strength to get back. So I said, see you guys, I'm heading back. So I sailed back to our little sort of slipway launch, and it was really touch and go. I got to the slipway and I was so done, I could not physically pull myself out of the sea. I literally had to lie on the slipway, leave my board beside me in the recovery position for 20 minutes until my body and strength had returned sufficiently to stand up and lift up my board. Literally done. If I'd been out 5 minutes longer, I genuinely wouldn't have been able to sort myself out.
When passers-by just pass by, don't touch it. You don't know where it's been.
Nobody goes out windsurfing at that time of year unless they're stupid. And I was stupid and thought I was fitter and younger. So, yeah, just take care. Even with a good wetsuit, you need to know what your limits are. But
yeah, you do. I've got a little anecdote. A previous girlfriend, she had 3 sisters, and so these 4 girls...
Where is this going?
Yeah, no, it's all good. Well,
Okay.
it's a bit sketchy, I suppose, but I'm going to tell it anyway, because it's a podcast, and we can be less responsible. We can leave the serious journalism behind, can't we? So they went to do a kind of, via some contacts I had, they went to do a water sports day somewhere or other, all 4 of them. And one of the sisters has just the most enormous bosoms.
Right.
And these were backloading wetsuits. They didn't realise, right? So she stuck it on back to front, this thing. So she's got like the big baggy arse panel around the front of her groin. And then she's trying to jam these double Ds or double E's or whatever the hell they were via this. And no, absolutely, it's a projectile just sticking out, poking through. And actually, the instructor didn't set them right.
At what point did he?
No, didn't set them right. They went about and did their water sports, came back with lots of photographs and stuff.
Now, in terms of because another important point with wetsuit is what you wear under or over it.
It's a good point. Because you wear special pants, don't you?
Well, I wear special pants under my wetsuit, which they're commonly known in my family as the gentleman's, because I went to M&S one day specifically to buy something that would keep everything tucked in, but wouldn't then... You know how they sort of ruche up if you wear swimming shorts under there?
I do, yeah.
Or your board shorts, they all ruche up, and then it gets a bit uncomfortable and you get a bit of chafing. So I thought, I'm just going to buy a nice little pair of briefs. And they started off a really unattractive kind of forest green, and they've only got worse with age. All the elastic has started to go. They faded to a kind of mossy type green. And now, whenever I take my wetsuit off, everybody has to avert their eyes because I look too much like that bloke. Do you remember Spikey from Notting Hill? Rhys Evans in his little underpants.
What a legend.
It just looks, it's a terrible look. A 50-year-old or 57-year-old bloke stripping off a wetsuit to some faded green briefs. It's just nobody wants to see that.
I never wear anything under my wetsuit.
But you fell for the thing of wearing them over your wetsuit.
Well, no, I out of a sense of decency towards the various people elsewhere on the beach or the water sports place I happened to be at, I used to put board shorts over the top of my wetsuit.
Is that your excuse for trying to look like a sort of cool teenage surf dude?
I looked in the mirror in the changing rooms, having put it on, it's super double tight, and I've looked at it and I've thought, I see some contours here, and I don't think we ought to share those with the world. So I put some board shorts on, and everyone just took the piss mercilessly.
As they should. It's a ridiculous thing. There is no purpose in that at all.
Yeah, no, so apparently that's not what you do.
No.
Whether you're 50 or 20 or 10, just wear the wetsuit, wear it with pride, contours are contours, go about your business.
Get yourself a little pair of gentlemen's, slip them on.
No, don't do that.
On that note, I feel we ought to talk a little bit more about some of the technicalities, because the seams, it's all about the seams and the linings.
Let's talk about seams. I'm quite excited. So, overlock stitching, right? That's the basic, isn't it? Where you
overlock
get a sort
or flat
of ridge.
lock. So,
overlock is the ridge that kind of
so that rather than
skin.
butting the neoprene up against each other, they physically overlap it, and then they stitch over the join. So that, you probably can't see it on camera, but you can see the stitching over it.
Yeah.
So very effective, relatively affordable. The trouble is that because you're stitching all the way through a wetsuit, you have loads and loads of tiny little holes.
Yeah.
I mean, only a tiny little bit of water, but it lets in a little bit of water. So that's the sort of basic is a flat lock or overlock stitching. The next one is called a blind stitch, which is where they butt the neoprene up against each other, and then rather than stitching all the way through, the stitch only penetrates halfway through the neoprene.
Yeah.
So that creates a sort of a better seam. And then there are two steps beyond that even. There's a taped seam where they do that and then put a little waterproof tape on the inside.
Yeah.
And then the final one is called a sort of welded seam where they physically drip melted rubber over the join to make sure that it's absolutely 100% waterproof. So slightly depends how much proofing you need. Personally, I'm fine with flat lock stitching. It works perfectly well for me. But if you're going full on Arctic diving or whatever it is, then that sort of welded seam is the absolute top level.
Yeah, it's good stuff, isn't it? And also I'd say for comfort, in addition to, we kind of intimated you need to pay attention to it, but rubberised panels on the chest and the back, that reduces evaporative heat loss, doesn't it, for your organs, which is important if you want to be in the marine environment for a good spell.
Yeah, so that one you've got there is got a sort of rubber finish on the outside or a rubber panel. Yeah.
And even this little shorty has a rubberised panel down the front there to keep you warm. But also reinforced knees and elbows. As I say, I do a bit of stand-up paddleboarding, but I'm a shipboarder. Yeah. So often I get down on my knees and they're in ribbons towards the end of the day if you don't have some reinforcement there. And of course you want to protect your suit as well, don't you?
And I've made that mistake on a hot day, using a shorty on a windsurfing board. Again, you sort of wear your knees raw. Yeah. And also, weirdly, monoskiing, I find, I don't know if it's just my ski or my terrible technique, but the water comes off the ski so fast that I actually get bruising on my, what do you call that, calf? Yeah. From the pressure of water. It's like almost sort of water injected into you, and it bruises your calf. So
monoskiing. You do the slalom stuff, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super good.
So if the boat's going like 22 knots, you're doing about 35 backwards and forward.
Yeah, which is fine up until last year. I was on my sort of 20-year-old ski, and the entire boot just sheared off the ski, and I face planted at 35 knots.
Was that? Did I see the video of that?
You did. It's not good.
So it wasn't your fault.
Well, I like to think it's not my fault. It's equipment failure, but it's probably my fault for not actually checking that the boot was still securely attached. But one other thing, just briefly, on wetsuits, is this new vogue for linings, inner linings. And rather than having just neoprene on the inside, some of them will have this sort of nice, slightly softer, fleecy material that adds an extra little layer of insulation, and it's just a bit more comfy, because neoprene can get a little bit sort of sticky and chafy, and something a little bit softer is rather nice. And that sort of seems to be a recent development. It also makes it a bit easier to get on and off, because God knows, taking wetsuits off at the end of the day is hard work.
It's hard putting them on, because they of course got to be tight, but getting them off when you're tired and they're wet and they just stick and grip.
Yeah. That's the main advantage of a shorty, is they're just so easy to put on and off.
Yeah, they are. I know a few now with pockets as well, which I find quite handy for keys.
Oh, yeah.
A little phone pocket. In fact, I think I've got one on the back of this. I don't even know what this is for, to be honest with you. It's called a rocket pocket. I know.
Do you reckon that's waterproof? You wouldn't put your car keys in there, would you?
I don't know. I've never used it, really. As I was saying to you, I didn't even know that I owned a wetsuit with a front zip. So that shows how frequently I've been out in that.
You need to get out a bit more.
I feel the cold, that's it. I just always wear the steamer. But in terms of advice for people buying wetsuits, because there are plenty of good brands out there, but for me, the most critical thing is, it's tempting just to sit at home in your armchair, buy it online, have it come through, try it on there. You've got to try it on in person. Go into a shop, try a few on. They've got to fit well, as I say, to be effective. Yeah. So you've
particularly if you're built like you and I, with pretty skinny frames, but relatively long. Yeah. It's quite hard to find one that actually fits you properly, because it's got to be. It is. It's got to cling to you. Yeah. Enough, but you've still got to have freedom of movement to do what it is, whether it's paddleboarding or windsurfing or whatever it may be. But wetsuit manufacturers, they know that. So the good ones will, even off the shelf, they'll have a medium size, but also a medium short or a medium tall, and we'll tend to be medium tall with our frame, won't we? And that tends to fit pretty well. But definitely try it on. Definitely try it on. And if you want to push the boat out a bit, well, of course, you can look at pursuit-specific suits, can't you? Which helps a lot, whatever kind of water sport you're into. But if you want something built for your body, there are plenty of opportunities for custom-built suits as well, aren't there? Oh, goodness, I've never gone that far. Yeah, I used to have one. I was racing Thundercats at the time, and I left it in a hotel room in Ireland. And actually, it's the only time I've actually cried as a grown man. I was so upset. You're good at leaving stuff around the place, aren't you? I'm so clumsy. But just a little Google search will come up with all kinds of options, snug in Cornwall or no limits in Wales. Are these all custom built ones? Yeah, and they're not cripplingly expensive. £400 or £500, you've got a really beautiful custom built. Quite cripplingly expensive. Well, I mean, for something that fits properly and works well. And that's not just about effectiveness in terms of its insulation. It's also about just looking the part. Actually, it is, isn't it? Because you want to look. You've finally gone there, haven't you? Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, because if it sucks you in all the right places, like those clever ladies' pants that come up halfway up your chest, you know what I mean? Spanks, just give you that physique you had 30 years ago. It's not a bad thing. Holding it all in. Yeah, but it's definitely worth considering a custom built wetsuit. You don't have to spend them. I mean, this Typhoon job, I think this is about £139. I find this works really well, sort of spring. Summerish, certainly in the UK. I've also got a Lomo winter wetsuit. Lomo just well, again, don't they? About £130 for a proper really winter 4-5 mil wetsuit. So there are cheaper options, but there are, because essentially, it's neoprene cut and stitched. It's not rocket science, is it? Whatever they tell you about with their buzzwords and their new features. Yeah. Just a well-fitting bit of neoprene that's the right sort of thickness with the features you need for your pursuit. That's what you want. Far more important to get a cheap one that fits well than an expensive one that fits badly. All day long. And when you find that wetsuit that you love, look after it. Yes. All right. Yeah. When you take it off, as we say, it's difficult. You're probably going to roll it down. It'll be inside out. It'll be covered in sand and salt and mess. Put it the right way out. Rinse it properly with lukewarm, fresh water, and then hang it properly on hangers. I'm pretty sure this one had some instructions on, which to be fair, even I didn't know about. So don't dry or leave in direct sunlight. Yeah. I didn't know that, because I guess that the UV light degrades the rubber in the neoprene. That's right. Don't fold for long periods. Not much danger of that. I don't really fold a lot of things. Chemically treated water may affect neoprene. Yeah, it's real simple. Rinse it down with fresh water, put it in a dark spot. But is that chemically treated? Isn't that chemically treated? What are you meant to rinse it down with? Rainwater? What, tap water's chemically treated? Of course it is. Is it? Yeah. Otherwise we'd all get food poisoning and things. They put chlorine in and stuff, don't they? Don't know. It's always worked for me. I've never seen any unnecessary degradation in my wetsuits. No, to be fair, I'm definitely going to better off rinsing them down than leaving them sort of sweating away with salt water all over them, because the salt water always draws moisture in, doesn't it? So they never dry properly unless you rinse them. So I think we've been of tremendous use to the viewers in relation to wetsuits. You might have a different opinion. Rinse them out, dry them out, put them away. Don't leave them hanging on your washing line for 3 weeks. Get one that fits. That's it. All right, so we're going to move on to our ip of the week. This is really interesting. This is about decking materials, the best decking materials for your boat. Yes. And, that
sector of the industry has come on in leaps and bounds. There's loads of opportunity to step aside from natural teak, which, as you know, is kind of frowned upon from a moral and ethical perspective.
It is. You know, it's a tricky one because you can still get forest grown managed teak rather than old teak taken from proper old forests, and there's a lot of talk around that, both in terms of there are sanctions on Myanmar, for example, where a lot of the really good quality old teak came from. So they're
down to illegal logging, though, aren't they? And
that's down to illegal
rights.
logging and human rights and all manner of different things. But there's also the argument that it's very hard to track where teak actually comes from. So even some of the ones that are seemingly approved, it's quite hard to be absolutely definitive about it. But I've got to admit, I love a natural teak deck. There is something quite magic about it. It feels good underfoot. It looks lovely. It tends to be a bit cooler, and I like the way it ages a little bit. I'm not one of these people who always
slightly silvers, doesn't it?
Yeah, silvers a little bit, and it obviously has that natural grain and natural variation.
And you can still get teak. I mean, there's plantation teak,
managed
teak, Southeast Asia, which is generally a bit lighter in colour, a bit wider in grain because it's quicker grown and slightly lower oil content and density, but still does a decent job. It's not like the Myanmar stuff we're talking about.
Durable. It hasn't got that really tight grain and really dense. It tends to be a little bit softer, but it still looks good, and it is grown in managed plantations, and you can grow it in sort of South America and Africa, so it doesn't all have to come from virgin forest.
Exactly so, but there are loads of options now.
Yes,
with
really good
pretend artificial teaks and various other decking materials here. Now, I was doing some research here, Hugo.
Oh, steady on.
Yeah. Proper
work.
And as always, you came up during my research. Listen to this. This is verbatim.
As a decking material.
This is a headline. Can synthetic teak decks look as good as the real thing? We step on board editor Hugo Andres Karnik 2250 to find out. Shameless. Hugo, you took a freebie off a decking manufacturer.
Flexi-Teak very kindly fitted some of their, it was a while back actually, their Generation 2 Flexi-Teak decking material. And in fairness, I have been super impressed with it. It makes a huge difference. Mine's a relatively sort of cheap boat. It just had basic, non-slip.
Fiberglass, was it?
Yeah, with just that sort of textured, that little sort of diamond cut non-slip decking, which was a nightmare to keep clean. You'd think it would be the easiest thing in the world. Really wasn't, because you get all the little seagull shit in grains in the little diamond pattern. It looked pretty ordinary. It felt pretty hard. It's quite... And fitting, it was the Generation 2 Flexi-Teak. They've now gone to Generation 3. But it's remarkably realistic because they sort of somehow print or scratch a grain into it. They build in sort of colour variation. I went for something called bleached effect.
Yeah, they're scrubbed and weathered and antique.
Scrubbed, I think.
Is that what you went for?
Yeah, I went for scrubbed rather than... and it looks really convincing, but I, to be honest, I don't particularly mind whether it looks sort of convincing or not. What I like about it is it's incredibly easy to maintain.
Just wash it down, get on with your day.
Seagull crap comes off it much easier than ingrained in that little fiberglass stuff. Sure, it'd be lovely to have real teak, but it would also be a pain in the arse looking after it. It is difficult because one thing about real teak is you shouldn't actually scrub it hard with the grain. You have to brush it quite gently across it, or because if you do that, you then start to sort of work out the grain. The sort of softwood comes out from between the harder bits, and you end up with a kind of ridged surface. And real teak, they tend to put relatively thin sort of layers on it now. It's not like you've got centimetres that you can sort of work through and sand it down. So I think Flexi-Teak is a really good artificial alternative.
And just to explain to our viewers, Flexi-Teak is basically PVC matting, isn't it? It's sheet.
Yeah, it's a sort of PVC sheet, is sort of so wide. But if you get a really good fitter, they will make it look much like real teak. You can have, the little sort of framing around hatches and so on.
Yeah.
You can have different colours of caulking. I mean, it's not caulking, it's because it's built into the actual matting, but you can go for I've got a sort of silvery grey caulking that again works really well with a slightly lighter shade of artificial teak. So I think there's 15 different colours of the wood itself. I think there's 3 or 4 different colours of the caulking. So you can have loads of different variations
as well.
You can have. I'm not sure if they offer sort of different widths of boards.
Well,
but
other brands certainly do, don't they?
Okay.
So I mean, you can really have a play with the kind of aesthetic of your deck, which is quite cool.
Yeah, so you can customise it.
You know, you will have seen a fair few boats, as I have, that use artificial teak, and in particular at the back end, around about the transom and the swim platform, it enables them to factor in curves, doesn't it? Which can be really
so you can have it sort of
very
wrapping around
attractive, which is obviously much more difficult to achieve with natural timber.
Yeah, quite hard to curve timber that certainly over a tight radius.
Exactly.
Like that.
So it's quite creative. It's quite stylish.
Yeah, but
it's quite cool.
I quite like some of these new. A lot of the time now you can get sort of EVA foam alternatives, which aren't pretending to be teak. They're like a sort of fairly dense foam that gives a little bit of give underfoot. They're nice and cool too. They can get wet. They're easy to clean and maintain.
Yeah, and they that sponginess, actually, it does take a little bit of the pain out of impact, doesn't it?
It makes a surprising difference.
Good.
You wouldn't think it does, but because you're barefoot most of the time when you're on board a boat.
Yeah.
And, when you get to our age and you've got quite sort of, your heel bone and your toes are all a bit gnarly, it's quite nice to have something a bit softer underfoot.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Yeah, old men unite. Well, look, I mean, it's actually quite practical in other ways too, because it's a lot lighter, isn't it, than natural teak, which obviously helps with a relatively small planing boat. As we say, soft, shock absorbing, very grippy, very easy to maintain.
And you can customise it. You can have your boat's name sort of etched into it, or any other little designs. If you want to have a compass points or something, you can be quite creative about it.
Yeah, it's quite cool. And it is, I must be right in saying, the EVA foam, is that recyclable? That's put a
that you've got me there, and I think that's one of those circular debates. Because wood ultimately is obviously very recyclable and should sort of be sustainable, and arguably more so than plastic that's made out of refined oil products. I'm not sure there's an obvious winner in that particular game, other than not using teak from virgin forests or.
Well, I'm not sure there's an obvious winner in the teak alternatives game either. We mentioned Flexi Teak, which is great.
And there's lots of alternatives. There's Perma-teak, there's all manner of...
Tech Deck. Perma-teak is quite interesting, because that's actually planks of PVC, isn't it, rather than matting? Is it not? Am I right?
I don't know.
I think it is.
Haven't ever had that fitted.
Relatively heavyweight UV stabilised PVC. Yeah. So there's all sorts of different alternatives. And I think S-Tech is a mixture of natural fibres and resins as well, isn't it? So there's different approaches. Yeah. But one thing I do want to talk about is cork.
Yeah, and that seems to be gaining traction for all the right reasons. I've seen a few boats with it now. I think Azimuth fit it to their C-Deck range. Yeah. One of the electric boats manufacturers, I think it's X-Shore.
Yeah.
Can't quite remember the name, but increasingly there is starting to be fitted to boats, because again it sort of got a lot of the plus points of a natural product like teak. It is obviously a biological product rather than a chemical product.
Yes,
they tend to make it out of sort of little grains of cork that's sort of glued together to create a consistent surface.
Yes, but it still feels very, very natural, doesn't it?
Yeah,
as you would expect cork to be.
Yeah,
it feels brilliant,
it's soft,
underfoot.
It's light.
And one really good thing about it, apart from the fact that, like the EVA sort of foam, it has that impact mitigation sort of quality about it, is the fact that when it's really baking hot, it remains cool, and when it's very cold, it remains slightly warm underfoot. It's fabulous for that. And let me tell you, in stark contrast to the messages we get from the manufacturers of alternatives to teak, that stuff gets bloody hot in the sun.
It can just do. Yeah, that is something that you do need to look out for. And when it gets to the stage, I mean, it's too hot to walk on, some of them.
Yeah.
So and they all make claims about it being better. Mind you, even real teak can get super hot, to be honest. Sometimes you do need to just...
Not cork. I'm a
really?
big fan. But one thing we do need to talk about with regards to cork is the fact that it doesn't quite have the image of teak. So I've been on a few boats at boat shows and elsewhere where I've heard potential customers, clients getting on board, having a look about, looking at the price, thinking, well, this is 600 grand. Why hasn't it got teak? And feeling like cork somehow is not a premium decking material. But I think that needs to change. It kind of does.
Yeah.
It kind of does. And a lot of things do in relation to original naughty teak.
And the other thing that people are always concerned about is the fact that because it's obviously a bit softer than wood, they're worried about it sort of chipping or dinging. But the beauty of it is that it's very easy to repair because it is a sort of reconstituted product. You can cut out a circle, replace it with another circle, and it looks exactly the same. You never see the actual join. Whereas if you get a ding in your teak, it's not easy to take out a plank of teak and replace it. And it would never match what's there in the first place. So it's a little bit softer, but I think it is surprisingly robust. I've never actually seen a chink in a teak, but if it does happen, you can actually repair it very easily.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So basically, we're saying no real need for slow-grown Myanmar teak anymore.
No, well, I think that is genuinely now unacceptable because unless you happen to have a supply that was cut down years ago when there weren't all kinds of sanctions and FSC certification, then the chances are it's come from somewhere which you really shouldn't be using it from. And there are now lots of really good alternatives, and whether that's an artificial teak, a foam that's not pretending to be anything other than foam, or something like cork, there are plenty of good alternatives, all of which work well and have their benefits and look good. I think I've seen good examples of all of those.
They do, but just don't expect these alternatives to be significantly significantly cheaper than teak, because they don't tend to be, do they? It's pretty much the same price all in.
A lot of the time it is, and it depends how fancy you go, but quite a lot of it that is in the actual fitting. You know, it makes a massive difference. If you just stick a few planks of permateak on yourself, it's probably going to be cheaper. But if you want it to look beautifully done with all that nice edging and butting and everything else, then a lot of the money goes on the fitting. But once you've done it, the maintenance is minimum. It should last the lifetime of the boat, as far as I'm aware. Mine still looks pretty much as good as the day I had it 15 years ago.
Oh, amazing.
So it's...
with virtually zero maintenance from you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That makes a difference, doesn't it?
Oh, it makes a huge difference. I really can't be bothered with endless washing and polishing and scrubbing.
No, nor me.
So I want to, what time I have, I want to be on the boat, not cleaning the thing.
Quite right too. Well, I think that probably brings us to an end for podcast 9. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we would, as ever, love to hear your feedback, because not just on what we've said, but on what you want us to discuss in future podcasts. Please do leave your comments, and hopefully you'll join us for podcast 10 next week.
Absolutely. Look forward to hearing from you.